8,900 of those deaths. Please could the council consider a campaign of education and informing the general public about this rule and possibly enforcing it? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I will just respond immediately to that because coincidentally in January, there is an intention for me to deliver leaflets to all the schools in the city to discourage vehicles idling outside schools and in the vicinity of the school. I know that our current mayor, Councillor Hawke, has been concerned about the same issue for many years, as far as I'm aware. And you're quite right, it's illegal. And there is a matter of enforcement that is probably the issue. But I think education is the way forward and drawing public attention to it. Hopefully, some of the things that we're doing will address that. But thank you for your question. Councillor Hocking.
Thank you, Chair. And just to add to that, no idling has been. I'm Sven Hocking, so I'm chair of the Salisbury Air Quality Management Group. No engine idling has been on the radar for quite some time. The practicalities of actually doing it are slightly tricky. So there is only one set of legal signage that you can use, which would allow enforcement to take place. And that signage has to come from the Department of Transport. And to get that signage erected, the process is so long-winded and torturous. Internal combustion engines would probably be phased out in their entirety before we even got there. So that is proving particularly difficult. We've had conversations with Salisbury Reds, and they updated us a couple of weeks ago on the latest technology you have in their buses, which includes cutouts on engines when the vehicles have been stationary with engines idling after a certain period. And they have software which they will monitor so they can tell which buses are leaving their engines idling for too long, why they're doing so, and who the driver of the bus was at the time. So the bus companies are getting onto it. We've had a look through the Air Quality Management Group at Salisbury City Council, who've done their bit, but are actually at the moment struggling to find, because we talked about stickers rather than signage, which we've done in the past with the litter enforcement campaigns, but we're struggling to find assets where we can actually put stickers on. And the last piece of the puzzle we're going through at the moment is working with Salisbury Bid. And we've asked them to have a look and see if there are any shops or empty shops that we could use for putting some stickers in near to points within the city, taxi ranks and the like, where we would consider engine idling to be a problem. So your concerns have not gone unnoticed. They are being worked upon, but as is usual with anything highways related, it is unfortunate, but these things are much trickier than they would first appear. But we are working on it. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Sven. Okay, just moving on. Any councillor questions or statements?
We have no councillor questions or statements.
Okay, minutes of the previous meeting, are we happy to accept those? I'm not hearing any objections, so I take it that they're accepted. Right. Moving on to the, sorry. Okay. Do we have any declarations of interest?
Declarations of interest have been received.
Any dispensations?
No dispensations have been agreed.
There are no chairman's announcements. High Street Fund, Blue Ball Road. Jump to page. Go straight. Is that the wrong page now? Okay. Right. This evening we have Andy Wallace here, and he's going to provide an update on the river project. It's nice to see Andy back. I'm sure you've got quite a lot to tell us about from what we've seen from outside the fence.
Thank you for having me back again. Good to be here and good to give you an update on how things are going on the project. As you will have, you'll see, as you say, there's a lot happened, a lot of progress. So I've got a little bit of a presentation here, just showing some photos and stuff from site. I'll go through, I'll whiz through fairly quickly, just to give you a bit of a snapshot of where we are. And then give plenty of time for some questions as well. I'm wary that I don't want to keep up too much of your evenings again. So if we can, it does come up on screen on one of them. Oh, I can. One, oh yeah, you're on both.
Yeah, thank you.
That was it. Well, very impressive. Brilliant. If we can get it onto a slideshow. Well, I'll start talking while you have a go at getting on slideshow. So I'm going to talk a bit about progress here. Obviously, a huge amount's been going on while we're there. I've got a few sort of aerial photos here. We'll just look at the one screen over there for the moment. But this is just showing up on Fishton Wreck. I must admit, this photo is a couple of months out of date. We do have a helicopter that goes over every month and takes photos, but for various reasons, weather-wise, it couldn't go for the last month. So this is a couple of months ago, but just shows the scale of work we did. You have to imagine it now. So the scale of work that we're doing in Fishton Wreck. What you can see there is the new channel that's been sort of excavated through there in the top part of it. Briefly, over there. And we've been excavating all that out. All the material from that's been used somewhere else. And we've got our sort of flood embankment that's constructed along the bottom. There's still big piles of material there in the middle of the site, which is still being used. This is certainly one of the bits of site. I'm going to come back to this subject a few times, but weather's been a bit of a challenge for us, as you can imagine. And trying to move material around from areas like this has been a bit of a challenge. As one of our drivers says, it's a bit like shoveling soup at the moment. So we haven't moved quite as much of the earth around as we would have liked to have done, but it is still moving forward one way or another there. Obviously, you've got the River Avon along the top there, and the allotments off to the side there. So basically, there's a path that runs sort of a sort of crescent-shaped path that runs through the middle of there that it uses for our sort of haul road at the moment, and everything to the above that on the image is all going to be a wetland area, wet woodland area. All our planting is due to start happening in a few weeks' time. We just started the boardwalks along there, ongoing at the moment. We've got a couple of boardwalks going across, which will happen in the next month as well. And then everything to beneath that area will be grass area. We've got our games area starting there middle of January. That's due to start. We were hoping to have started that this month, but again, it's just too wet at the moment to do anything there. But if we can move on a slide. This just shows our channel down through. This will be the future money shot with the cathedral in the background, and our nice new channel down through there. Obviously, there's still all to be planted up, and again, hopefully see it again in a mo. That's all. See it partly. Yeah, that's our new channel do there. That's quite nice actually, see both of those images on the screen, because one is showing our channel as we would have liked to have had it through most of the works, and the other channel is showing what it's been like for the past month with the amount of water we've had. It's a lake, not a river channel, which is how it's meant to be in flood conditions. Ideally, though, not quite this time of year. So we'll scroll through a couple of, there we are. So the next one there, that's our lake, how it was a few weeks ago. We've just drained that down to do some work there as well. But moving on to another slide. So this is through Central Car Park area, nice little shot to show the new channel that's been done down through there. This was just after we first opened it back up to flow here. So this is where we didn't have any flow through here for quite a while. And this nicely shows all our weirs down through there. This is where we, you know, as you'll have heard me hang on about it far too much. It's where we did have a big sluicegate before we started work that was called Big Barrier to Fish. And these are all our nice fish friendly weirs down through there, which are working well. We've had plenty of fish through there. The otter keeps having a nice little swim around on them, so it must be working reasonably well. That's in the middle of the picture is the new vehicle bridge that will replace the old Millstream Approach Bridge. That's there, just almost ready for some vehicles to move over it, although we won't be opening up to the public quite yet. We need to finish all the highway works on both sides, but those have started now as well. Just moving on a slide, just shows the rest of the channel down through there. I think it's quite good because it just highlights how wide the park area will be once it's constructed. So all the area that looks brown there currently will be green. So there's a lot of planting happening within all of that at the moment. We're just starting to pull back, tidy up to be able to do the footpaths and stuff through there at the moment as well. And the big sort of square rectangle areas you can see in the center of the image are the abutments for the new footbridge that will go across. So that kind of shows where the footbridge is. So that's those abutments. Actually, again, this photo is a bit old. Those abutments have pretty much been done now, and we'll be looking to lift that bridge in January. Same time as doing the coach park, which I'll come back to in a minute. So just moving on. I thought just focusing on some of the weir, just show some of the detail we'll go on. So this is our main weir at the top of the new channel before we allowed any flow through. Quite an engineered structure as such, but designed very carefully. All those rocks are not randomly placed. They are carefully placed to be in a particular way to allow the right gaps between them for small fish to be able to swim up and through them. And then there's a much bigger notch through the middle for the bigger fish to go. And the upstream and downstream face of the weir are roughened up with all the stones and pebbles on there, again, to allow fish to be able to easily make their way up them. And then if you move forward, that's what it looks like now. So nicely underwater, flow going over it well. I have stared at it quite a lot, waiting to see a fish jump up it, but I haven't had one yet, but they are there. We certainly know the salmon have been through and gone past. So they'll be there. I just must have missed them all. And going downstream, it just shows our weirs down through the main channel here, which are working pretty well at the moment. We did, as you might well have seen from doing there, unfortunately we had really high flows at the beginning of November, had a lot of rainfall, really uncommon for that time of year, which I'll come back to later, which did wash out part of our bank and part of our planting. It's a risk you take working along rivers. We'll be able to repair it and put that back. That's just a consequence of working next to a river. But moving on, that's just a view of the vast new road bridge that's there, with parapets as they have to be to meet safety standards. It is quite a beast, I have to say, but it will convey vehicle traffic very well. There will be, when it's done initially, it has a footpath on the left as you're looking at it, and single lane traffic on the right, sort of give-take arrangement on there, as the old bridge used to have. And hopefully we'll put some planters or something on it to soften it a bit as well. But moving on, we've also got several footbridges in place now. So this is just, you can see the vehicle bridge in the background. This is the new bridge there. Obviously it didn't have the decking on it quite when I took that photo, but we've got three bridges almost identical to this now, all in place throughout the scheme. So the same design throughout, and we're using those, the same design, the railings there throughout the rest of the scheme as well. And they look really smart, actually. Really pleased with how those bridges have done, and will hopefully allow people to start walking over them in a couple of months' time. So moving on, can't not talk about the works we did on. So this is the channel. This channel's called the Millstream rather than River Avon, but it's the one that runs down to the Boltings Bishop's Mill area, and past Tesco's, where we're doing a little bit of work. We finished a while ago now, but putting in these what we call berms. So these are low-level banks, these sort of gravel banks. So you can see on the right there, and this is about basically creating the right habitats within the channel there. But we have this wonderful bit of kit which is firmly on my Christmas list. It's called Spider Excavator, which I think drew more crowds to Salisbury than any of the rest of our works. The driver did like to show off when you got a group of people watching, but it worked amazing bit of kit and worked really well. And one of the consequences we had of that is by putting in these gravel banks, we basically inadvertently created a wonderful play area for the otters. I think the next photo shows a mum with her cubs there. I took one night, that's just outside Tesco's. But they've been there so much that there's days where we just couldn't do work because they just wouldn't get out of the way. I've never known. I've spent my life around rivers, looking for otters quite a bit, and I've occasionally seen them, but normally by having to be really discreet and hiding away. These ones, I've stood there within 2 meters of them in bright high vis, and they don't seem bothered at all. I've never known otters like it. They're a bit of a strange subbreed, but I think they're drawing quite a few crowds. I know quite a few people I've spoken to who are coming to Salisbury purely to see the otters, which is quite impressive. It wasn't something we foresee as a tourist and benefits of the scheme, but there you go. Moving on, just to highlight one other little bit of work we're doing. This is up at Sarah St Paul's Primary School, because we had some funding from Department for Education for the scheme. We had to do some improvements to their school. So we've been in, as well as doing various bits of educational work and artwork with them, which has been great fun. We've also been in a couple of their playgrounds where they had issues with flooding, just because drains that just didn't work. And we've created these rain gardens in the thing. So routed all their roof drainage into these areas, in which naturally filtrates water into the ground, but also provide great habitat for insects and various things there, and for the children to watch and see how they grow, and nice little beams and stuff around them for them to play. So they've really enjoyed seeing that and being able to use that. So a nice little add-on to the work we've been doing. So just wanted to talk about briefly some of the challenges, some of the issues we've had on site. Somehow we are just about still on programme, which I still think is fairly miraculous considering some of the things that have happened over the past few years. I've been involved in a lot of construction projects, and I've never had quite the number of issues thrown at me that this one has. So just go through a few sections. Earthworks here. So unknown ground conditions. The photo on the left is one of my favourite ones now. This is the central car park, and we dug a hole through it. And what you're looking at is a very small bit of tarmac on the top. Oh, and then underneath it is just a whole load of old car tyres. And that's what's holding up a fair chunk of the car park. We didn't know that was what was there, but made for quite fun for excavating out. We've got a phenomenal amount of bottles and crockery. I don't even know what to do with some of it. We've got so much, but amazing amounts been found. But also we knew we were going to hit a lot of contaminants in the ground there, especially in the central car park area, but we didn't quite ready for quite the amount we've done. Every nasty we could have found, we found in that car park, and some not that far below the surface really. That's just what looks like a fairly innocent hot water tank, but that's lagged in the worst kind of asbestos you can have. So when that came out the ground, we knew what it was straight away, and we had to isolate off that whole about 15-meter radius around there that was isolated off for about 10 days. While we had it properly investigated and moved off. So all the challenges of construction work. But moving on to another one. I think you've heard me talk enough about utilities before, the bane of my life. We're still not quite done. We have done all the BT works now, but we're still waiting for SSE, who should have done some works several months ago, to do their last diversions for us. It will possibly happen in January. Who knows? We have no control over it, but certainly has been a real challenge on cost and programme for the project. But I think the last key one I want to talk about is the next slide is weather, because my God, this has been a year to be working. The photo on the left was actually taken in August, This is when we normally worry about dust and everything on sites, and I was still wading around in ankle-deep mud everywhere. But we've had real issues with high river levels. So through the start of the year, we had a lot of water, but also perfect conditions for weed growth within the channels. So that photo to the left just shows the amount of weed, and it was amazing ecology-wise, fantastic. But it meant that our water levels were about 1 metre higher than what we'd normally expect for that time. So added the challenge. And then flooding wise, I mean, site's been inundated more times than I can recall. It's we've just been phenomenally unlucky in terms of weather. I think the next slide was just an attempt to kind of highlight this. In that, what this shows, a bit complicated, but it basically shows a sort of annual change. So the high points are middle of winter, the lowest points are middle of summer there. On an annual basis, the grey line you can see running through the middle is the average of what you'd expect. The black line is sort of previous years, and the red is the last year. So the pink, the solid pink at the bottom is the lowest that's ever been. The blue at the top highlights the highest it's ever been. And as you can see, outflows were substantially above average all the year. And so much. If we'd been doing this last year, this would have been a breeze. It would have been so much easier. But and just sort of highlighting it, I think if you just click on what I've showed in the circles there, these are all points within the year where we've hit a record flow for that time of year. Bear in mind, we've got 65 years worth of record. So in 65 years, on those times of year, we've never had as high a flow. And especially the last month or so, we've broken every record there can be in terms of flows there. So quite a challenge. But moving on, I think you know all these, but what this is, I normally do this for other people who aren't so familiar with it. What else can you have that could go wrong? Well, you've had them all. Someone drive a car into a river? Yep. Someone conveniently flood our site with sewage? Yep. Live grenades? Yep. All tick. Had all of those. Just to add to the fun. But maybe I'll only talk briefly about wildlife side of things because you know all this, but huge amount of time and effort's been put into protecting wildlife while we're there. So the voles we've moved on, probably thankfully moved on, to be honest, from all reports we're getting locally, because unfortunately the mink have really taken hold in Salisbury at the moment and have wiped out most of the vole population, sadly, especially through Harnham area at the moment. So we probably did the voles a big favour by moving them somewhere else. Otherwise, they would have just been consumed by the mink. So they're thriving well. We've got another colony. We've created a colony of voles down by Ringwood that are doing well at the moment. Whether voles will re-establish in the area we can do will only depend on how well we can tame the mink, really, unfortunately, at the moment, sadly. But we'll do what we can. Next one, you know about fish. Obviously, we've been doing a huge amount of work. Had to do multiple fish rescues of the channel because we think we've got all the fish out, got the water out, and then it floods again, and then we have to do it all again. So we've done that several times now and moved a phenomenal amount of fish there, and still seeing a huge amount of fish in there. It's fantastic to see how much is still there. And moving on. A lot of other things as well. I think it's probably spoken bottom right about the rare orchids that suddenly appeared on site that we had to carefully move on. But this summer as well, I have never seen so many tadpoles. Every little pool of water on site, wherever random places, would be full of tadpoles. So we've stocked quite a few ponds locally with tadpoles for people, but moved them on to various places as well. But yeah, there's still quite large frogs still going around. We've done a huge amount of work, consultation with different groups. We've been working with various different adult groups at schools. I've been into a few different primary schools, been into South Wilts schools, Bishop's Wordsworth, running different sessions with them. Really engaged with various groups there, particularly Sarah St Paul's and South Wilts as the closest schools. They've been heavily involved in the scheme, and it's been fantastic to work with them. But the other group we've been doing, I think I'll probably go to the next slide. We've been working with this group called the Ripple Effect. So it's with Wessex Archaeology, working with a group of local adults with various needs. and getting them involved and working with them for 2 years. It must be, it's one of the most rewarding parts of the project that I've been involved in, to see how they've developed through it, how it's improved their well-being, but also their awareness and understanding of the project. I don't know if anyone's had a chance to go to our exhibition in the Young Gallery. Unfortunately, I think we may have been finished today. So if you haven't been, it may still be some of it there tomorrow, but I think we're just taking it down this week. But it's a really, really good thing to see. If you do get a chance, there is a video we've done. It is 30 minutes long. There's a link there, and you can find it easily online. I would recommend looking at it if you have time, just to see, because it's a real example, something I'm really determined to do on future projects as well, and certainly recommend considering on all other sort of schemes like this if you get a chance. So just quickly on public art as well, we've got a few things gone in. So our willow sculpture is up at Fisherton Rec. It's just still fenced off at the moment because we decided it was probably best to leave it fenced off till next spring, when it will start properly sprouting and establishing a bit better. But that will become something a lot more significant than that once we will weave in some more branches as well into it next year as well. And next one, I think it's probably all the benches. So we've a local artist made us these bespoke tables and benches, all based on certain fish species there, with information about the fish on there. They're all stacked up on site, ready to be put in place on Fisherton Rec, hopefully next month as well. Hopefully all you may have seen the work we're doing at the toilet block in the coach park. So we've got a big, Fred Fiver's been working on the mural on there. He's probably about 3/4 of the way through it now. So it's looking good and getting a lot of attention. So I'm very pleased about that. We do have another mural that's going in on the toilet block near Sainsbury's as well, which Councillor Riddle came and saw a presentation about earlier today as well. And that looks really quite exciting as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing that come through. I think next I was just going to talk about the coach park. So in January we start work on the coach park, and so we'll be closing the coach park off for about 3 months while we have to do the work there. So we work very much closely with Wiltshire Council and yourselves and other organisations on this. Been a lot of sort of promotion of it, consideration of where coaches will go. While we're doing it, things have been deliberately planned for January, which was always the plan, because this is when, in theory, it's the quietest time, least amount of coaches coming into Salisbury. We could have done it earlier, but deliberately have left it to that point. So we'll be doing all the works that's shown there on the left there. So we're creating a drop-off coach park in the area that's currently, so there'll be six bays in there for coaches to safely come in, drop off their passengers, and then move over to the layover car coach park, which will be on the other side of the river where our compound is currently. So we're working on that at the same time. And this will just make for a much nicer welcome experience for those arriving in Salisbury. We've got a little welcome area there. We're going to have a information board there, visitor information, and a lot of planting there as well. A little pocket park to the north area there as well. And we've been working very much closely with your street scene team as well to make sure we're providing the right facilities there for your use as well. So that's all part of that. So I think, it's programming. I guess I should cover that. So what's happening now? We are into planting season now. So once we come back after Christmas, we'll be starting our planting. We basically have 2 months where we have to do all our tree planting. So that will be happening. We've got about 1,000 trees to go in 2 months. In February time, I'm aiming to have the Riverside footpath open through Fisherton Rec. So this is where we're doing our boardwalk through there. We've got our viewing platforms and stuff in there. So then we'll open up a route from sort of Five Rivers through to the Avon Valley Nature Reserve again. And by March, we should basically be finished at Fisherton Rec and Ashley Road. However, because of the weather, we weren't able to do any sort of grass seeding end of last year, and we can't do that till April. So we won't be able to open up actually some of the grass areas till May, June, when that's actually established. Down the Central Car Park, we're intending to have the Riverside footpath open in February as well. And we should have most of the works done again through there in March time. as well. The coach park works come a little bit afterwards, so we hope to have that done in April, and basically next May, I'm done. I'm out of here. And we'll be pretty much all finished and areas reopened. So that is where we are. And thank you for your time as ever.
Thank you for that, Andy. Tremendous amount of work. There's still a fair bit to do, but the end's in sight now, isn't it? You got a holiday booked for this summer?
Yeah, next summer. I'll,
Are there any questions for Andy on his presentation?
I was really interested when you were talking about the mink and how they're taking over. What do you do about them without impacting the otters? How do you nobble them?
So there's a lot of work that goes into mink control, and there is you put these rafts out that basically trap the mink, and they get shot. There's no other way to do it. But they're such ferocious predators. I mean, it's obviously, as you know, they're introduced species. They're not native at all to this area. But unless you look at it on a much sort of catchment-wide scale, just to, if we just went in one local area and tried to do something for the mink, they've just moved in from other areas. It's you have to do it over a much wider area, and that's been really quite successful in a lot of areas. It had done quite well, but they just seem to have taken a bit of a stranglehold again in centre of Salisbury, unfortunately. And they are water voles. I mean, like I said before, water voles' main aim in life is to get eaten by another animal. That's their main role. But they can basically hide from pretty much all their predators just by diving down their burrows and waiting until everything moves on. But mink are small enough to get into the burrows, so they just follow them in, and game over. So yeah, there's a huge amount of work with various different organisations working on the mink, but I think there's going to have to be even more, unfortunately.
Thank you. Councillor Nettle.
Thanks. Andy, I remember when we started this in, I think it must have been 2019 when we started talking about this, if it wasn't earlier. I mean, it does seem, I bring you say 24, and I think this was a 3-year programme, and it is a 3-year programme, but it just emphasises the amount of planning that goes into these kind of projects. So on behalf of all of us, thank you very much for that. And thank you for sticking with it. That's the other thing, that so many projects we see, you have different project managers, different programme managers that come in, and you've been there, the constant person that's been in charge. And so we're very grateful from the council side for that. I just wondered, I didn't see when the coach park was going to be reopened. I didn't see that date, so I don't know if you've got.
Yeah, so I'm aiming for the end of April at the moment. The tricky bit is actually not the coach park itself. It's the layover coach park on the other side, because it's quite a bit of a logistic exercise to basically for us to demobilise from there and do the works there at the same time. So, but we can't open the main drop-off coach park if we haven't got anywhere for the coaches then to go. So it won't really work. So I would certainly, I'm sure we'll have the main coach park done before the end of April, but it's just getting the layover coach park done by there as well. It should be done. The main coach park I'd expect to be done before the end of March. So I'm hoping should be at some point during April.
Just one for the council, really. Are we intending that all coaches go there, including the ones that stop in Exeter Street?
I'm afraid I can't answer that question.
So
the question was for this council.
Okay.
When the coach park is open, are we expecting all coaches to use that car park and therefore leave space in Exeter Street for traffic, as opposed to coaches?
I'm afraid I don't know what the plan is for that, Jeremy. I just don't know.
The council discussed it some time ago, and so it's been hovering there, and it just seems an ideal opportunity. If this is going to be a coach park, and we've got all this investing in all of this, that all coaches go there, and not just the ones that, including the ones that want to just go to the cathedral.
Okay, I think that's an important question which we need to look into. Thank you. Councillor Hocking.
Thank you, Chair. Andy, great stuff. Looks like it's actually been finished on time and everything as well. So that's really, really good news. We have our detractors who have been running the thing down like it's going out of fashion, but it's the normal suspect. But I just like to say, well done. It's going to look brilliant when it's finished. Yeah. So just ignore all the people out there who are sort of throwing their toys at the pram. My question, with my Salisbury flood coordinator hat on, given that we've had 3 record flow peaks already, that's not even the new year when we can expect it. Do I need to be worried?
A little bit. I'm not going to lie. Although yeah, it's worth noting we've actually been quite lucky compared to further west. If you only have to go about 20-30 kilometres further west, and they've had about 3 times the amount of rainfall we've had. Just to put it in perspective. So in some respects, we've been a bit lucky. I could have kissed the TV last night when the weatherman was talking about a high pressure being going to set to over the south of England for the next week. I was going, yes, please, please. But it's certainly going to be interesting times. We need because groundwater level, as you know, flooding really here is driven on how high the groundwater levels are, and they're really high. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. So we really need not just a dry week. We need a dry 3 or 4 weeks to really start bringing things back to something normal. But certainly, yeah, the flows we've had, last month, that's what we expect in January, February, not November. It's just been an absolute bonkers year. 12 months ago, we were worried about droughts. Put in perspective. Sorry. I would like to have given a nicer answer, but I can't.
I think possibly we need to contact the Met Office for that one, Councillor Hocking.
If you wouldn't mind, yeah.
Are there any further questions for Andy? Councillor Corbyn.
It's not a question, it's just to say thank you for all the work. It is appreciated. It was actually quite nice to see the video that appeared on Facebook the other day, although everybody poo-pooed it, of the guy in the canoe. That looked amazing. And actually, if that was to showcase Salisbury and what is to come, then that's better. But obviously the safety aspect wasn't great, was it?
I mean, yeah. I was curious about that one. One is trespassing through an active construction site, and if someone had videoed themselves, walking through a construction site, people would have gone up in arms. But apparently, it's fine to kayak through one. It was incredibly dangerous what he did. He was very lucky that it wasn't a more serious incident, and we were very lucky that we didn't have to go and rescue him as well. So I'm appalled that video, and it led to a couple of things. The day after, we had British Canoe Union on the phone going, "Oh, fantastic! We're going to be able to run canoe events through Salisbury." No. It's not canoe friendly at all in any way. He will have wrecked his canoe doing that.
It just looked very nice, and actually it was a nice view. So
Yes.
for some of us that are old enough to remember when the boats used to go by the boathouse anyway,
Yeah.
it's kind of not a view that we've not seen before.
No.
So it was quite nice that it popped back up.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if there are no further questions, thank you very much, Andy, and we'll look forward to the completion of the project.
So do I, yes.
Okay, moving on to item 9, which is environmental services update from Mark.
Good evening, everybody. I'll just let Joe get the slides there. So we'll just start with the street scene team. So for this year, we've had 1,023 jobs reported, with 67% of those coming through the My Wiltshire app. I have circulated with the agenda papers there the monthly stats, which gives you a year-on-year comparison to the type of jobs that the team are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Then we've got the venture stats. I think it was Councillor Hocking requested the stats to be displayed in a slightly different way. Hopefully, what we provided shows that information. So over the last year, from January through to October, we've had 769 reports with the highest categories being public drinking and begging. And again, you can see that on the separate information that's been sent through with the papers. And in that team, we're currently recruiting for 2 street scene operatives at the moment. Then we've got 2 vacancies in the Barrow team. So those are the guys that work in the city centre predominantly. If we move on to the facilities team. So the works at the Tollgate Depot are progressing pretty well. A bit frustrated. I was hoping to be in before Christmas. The 2 things that are stopping that. One is our subcontractor who are putting in the new shutter doors have said they can't now deliver before Christmas. They're putting in those doors in the first 2 weeks of January. And some of the works on the roof have been delayed because of the wet weather. The works to make the roof fully watertight can't be done in the wet weather. Unfortunately, you need a few days of clear, dry weather, which, as Andy says, with the high pressure, hopefully we can crack on and do that. We're progressing well we're starting to progress well now with the upgrade to LED lighting across our sites, which is to help us reduce our energy consumption. So that's the first part of that is starting next week. I say the Camping and Caravan Club, the upgrade of the washroom facilities underway. It's actually finished, so that's done. So if anybody's up at the Camping and Caravan Club, you will see that that has now been done. And out here in the main hallway in the Guildhall in January, we're having a redecoration programme in here as part of our pre-planned maintenance works. Just moving on to CCTV. So the control room continues to have excellent coverage with January, April, May, June, July and September all having record hours covered by staff and volunteers. And within this pack, you'll see the month by month stats for anybody who wants to delve into those a little bit more thoroughly. The team currently has 22 active operators, 2 part-time paid operators and 20 volunteers. And we've just had an additional 7 volunteers have gone through the SIA Security Industry Authority course, and will now have ongoing training in the control room. So hopefully we're edging towards that 30 mark, which is which would be fantastic. And we have now received, I believe, into the accounts the Safer Streets funding for the 4 deployable cameras. So our CCTV manager Keith is just working out the best place to locate those. Going over to the crematorium and cemeteries. So the crematorium figures from April through to November total 667 compared to 886 across the same period last year. Again, this drop in figure is mainly due to the fewer direct cremations taking place following the closure of Just Cremation in 2022, which I've updated this committee on previously. The roof works over the summer and the industry being quieter across the board. A new brochure for the crematorium has been finished and will be provided to funeral directors to share with families. I've got copies if anybody does want to have a look, and it's also available on the website on the crematorium page. Some lights have been moved and replaced in the car park at the crematorium due to damage caused by poor driving. In the parks team, so we've got new play equipment has been installed. Where are we? Up at Ridingsmead and Wellworthy Drive. That's now in. The Avon Valley Nature Reserve volunteer group have been working hard on the riverbank next to the leisure centre, carrying out some vital repairs. The bank had eroded, leaving sharp metal and other things exposed from the old landfill site. And the volunteers repaired the bank using chestnut stakes, hazel branches, hessian mesh and ringwood stone. And they managed to complete the work in just one day. And they are coming in actually to have a thank you tea and coffee afternoon with the hour with the mayor tomorrow, I think it is. We've had 2 new hour boxes installed on Harnham Slope. This project was organised by the Friends of Harnham Slope volunteer coordinator Paul Dorey. Local resident Robert Burrows kindly constructed the boxes, and the City Council's contracted Borden's Tree Care sponsored the project by paying for the materials and the installation of the hour boxes in the trees. The 4 new Parks EV electric vans have now been delivered after a very long wait to get them. They've all been well received by the team who are enjoying using them for their daily tasks. Although not in my team, the other EV van for the markets and events has also been delivered and is being used out on the for the markets and events now. So you should see that out on the market square if you're up early enough. A tree, a London plane, fell into the river at Churchill Gardens at the beginning of, I think it was November. The tree was quite a large one and caused water to flow over the path towards the main car park, which increased flooding in the area. Again, our tree contractor Bordens have now successfully removed the tree from the river. There's a sort of bit of a picture there on the slide with the equipment in the river. They had boats, lots of people in there. It was quite an operation, but they got out in one way or another. The team have are well into their winter hedge trimming works now, and again, hopefully you've seen across the city those hedges going back now. Very pleased for those of you that didn't see the press release to confirm that we did receive just shy of 130, or we were awarded just shy of £135,000 from the Urban Tree Challenge Fund, which will go towards planting 200 trees and their maintenance over the next 2 years, which I think is great news. Our replacement planting for this year includes 168 trees and hedging plants, with additional planting of 154. So that's 100 from the Urban Tree Challenge Fund and then 54 additional trees going in as well, giving us a total of 322 trees that our team are putting into the ground as we speak. And again, for those of you with a keen eye, you will have seen quite a number of trees already being planted over the last few weeks. And that's my update on my services. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any questions for Mark on any of those items? Councillor Nettle.
Thanks, Mark, and as usual, a very comprehensive report, and thank you very much for that. A couple of questions. One is, given the an understandable delay because of, we've just heard, had an unbelievable amount of rain, the delay on the project in Talbot Road, how does that affect our budget for that? And will we be looking for additional funds because of the basically is there an overspend because of that? Or is it contained in the budget?
So there's no overspend on the capital programme for that. It's just a delay in terms of the doors going in.
Yes, brilliant. Thank you. My second one, which is slightly personal, but it's probably for all, speaking on behalf of all grandparents as we approaching Christmas. In Lizzie Gardens, the one piece of equipment that's the most popular is out of action at the moment. I believe there's new rubber to be put on the floor there. That's the swing action one that seems every child wants to be on. And I just wondered if that's going to be in for Christmas.
I don't know the answer to that, but I can find out and send an email around giving some further information. I do know, unfortunately, that somebody had to be cut out of the swing at the weekend as well. A teenager decided that they wanted to get into a younger person's swing, and the fire brigade were called. So a little bit of excitement for a weekend.
I hope you sent them a bill. And I do have one other question. Sorry, you talked about maintenance of the foyer, which is really good news. We're going to be seeing the painting. I know there was a plan through 2 administrations to do something to the roof there. Is that in the strategy? Is that in your workload for next year with the budget?
That's over to the administration to provide those funds. I
didn't see anything for it in, and I just wondered if it was in your plan, your forward plans.
So it is in the capital programme to be done, but it'll be over to the administration to provide.
Yeah,
necessary funds.
sorry, well, it's not a trick question. Sorry, it's not a trick question. I'm just asking if it was in the schedule.
Yes, it's on my list of capital projects that I would like to see completed.
Thanks.
Councillor Hocking.
Chair, thank you. A couple of things if I may. So one, trees. Met with Chris Hildrup from National Highways again today to have a chat about some stuff. They have been given, and he reminded me again, something like, or they have committed to plant 3 million trees in the country over the next, wherever it is, all over the UK. So if anybody wants some, including the City Council, then please get in contact because he will give you as many as you can take. Yeah. So that's the first bit, fairly light-hearted. Secondly, less so. I'm going to go back to my favourite topic, venture security. Now, I know that the rest of the funding for venture has been pulled from the budget as it stands, so we are going to lose them. I maintain that is a very serious mistake. You do not know what you have until it's gone, and when they're gone, you will find out what you had and what they did. Now, I know some members of the administration were vehemently against venture from day one, be it politically or be it ideologically, and for whatever reasons they weren't wanted. They thought, you know, no, we don't want these people for any number of different reasons. And I know now we're saying that the reason is budgetary. And it's being looked at as well. It's just, you know, it's just a number on a bit of paper. But we've seen from the stats, they engage a lot with begging. They engage a lot with street drinking. They engage with antisocial behaviour. And I know that one of the reasons for cutting from the budget is because there is thoughts within the administration that someone else should be doing it. It's the police's fault, yada, yada, yada. Well, yeah, might be. But this is about partnership working with the other partners we have in the city. It's about working with the BID. It's about working with the police. It's about working with any number of other organisations, Wiltshire Council, the homeless team. So the venture guys over the years do not only go and tap street drinkers on the shoulder and say, please don't do that. They go around every morning and they have a look in the usual places where people have been rough sleeping. They go and contact people that they haven't seen before. They find out where they've come from. They find out about them. They find out what they're up to. Over the years, they've built up a relationship with some of those people that live in Salisbury, and as a direct result, are much better behaved than they ever used to be, because they know that someone is sort of looking out for them, if nothing else. Yeah, this is about partnership working. It's about helping other people, helping the police, helping Wiltshire Council. We have had one of the reasons we have almost no rough sleeping in this city and haven't had for years is the work that Venture have done with Wiltshire Council in picking up these people the moment they arrive and saying, actually, chaps, if you need help, this is the place you need to go to get it. The way not to help yourself is to stay sleeping on the street. So we have actively pointed these people in the direction where they can get the help that they need, be that accommodation, be that help with drug and alcohol abuse, be that help with any manner of other things. But they are the principal reason why we have almost no rough sleeping and have had almost no rough sleeping on our streets for years. You take away these people and that's going to come back. Yeah, one of the reasons we haven't had over the years up until recently, when they were cut in half, is all the aggravation that goes with street drinking in the afternoons, on the streets, in the market square, in the Guildhall square and on the cheese market. We put a stop to all of that because we engaged with these people and gently led them down the road to the best place for them to be drinking, if they were going to be drinking, was where they lived, their home, their accommodation, their hostel, wherever it was, and not on the street. We stopped that. The net result, no fighting in the market square at 5 o'clock every single evening. You go back 4 or 5 summers ago, every single night, swearing, fighting, shouting, battleground out there. So we've got all these tourists sat in the Ox Road sat in the piazza thinking, what a great city Salisbury is, but hang on a minute, all those drunks are fighting again. And it was the same people, time after time. We stopped that. Right, this city has been a much better place because of the work that we have done with venture security. There isn't anybody in this city that is asking for them to be taken away, apart from the current administration. You will rue the day that you did this. Trust me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hocking. Caroline, Councillor Corbyn.
Thank you. Yes, as part of the previous administration, they all wanted venture security. It's a big financial outlay that we have sustained for years, which we shouldn't have done. I'm not saying that they haven't done some good, but actually that cost was not ours to shoulder. It's still not our cost to shoulder. The benefit of having them could have been a benefit for mental health people and more social work support workers. So there was other outlets that money could have been used for. As a parish council, to constantly fund something that should have been provided by the police or another service is wrong. So all our residents are up in arms at the lack of funding that we can do for nice things like the Christmas lights switch on, etc., etc. Maybe if we hadn't paid for security guards, that some of that budget could have been put by for that.
Thank you, Councillor Corbyn. I appreciate there are strong feelings about this on both sides, and I think you've had an opportunity to express those views. I don't feel it's appropriate to pursue it at this particular meeting. And as you pointed out, Councillor Hocking, it was a budgetary decision, and I'm sure there will be other opportunities to express concerns about the allocation of the budget. But unless anybody has any further points to make on that, I'd just like to ask anyone has any further questions of Mark on his report. Councillor Nettle.
Yes, help us out here. I just wonder then, I appreciate this is a budgetary decision, and what's venture do. And I'm sure that if we don't have venture, then we'll be investing in a lot of other services, which is up to this council to decide on. What I would like to inquire and maybe suggest is that this is a big one. It is a big cost for any one person. I know we've talked to the bid, but as Councillor Hocking has said, that it's just a partnership. And I wonder if there's been any discussion with the other partners about supporting this rather than it all coming from one particular source or two sources. And that would be my question to the leaders to look at, or for us to investigate before we set the budget and we have an argy-bargy at the budget meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Nettle. I'm sure the matter will be discussed further at leaders' meeting before the budget is finalised. Any other questions for Mark?
There was one more. These actions have consequences though with this, don't they? So there are consequences to the city council pulling funding for venture, I understand. And that will have an impact on the funding from the bid. Is that correct?
I haven't got access to that information. I don't know how that would work.
I know you may not have access to the information, but you do have the interim clerk and a leader on the panel. So I can't believe that neither of them have any information on that.
Councillor Riddle.
This is not a budget meeting. You have made your points. If you want to discuss them afterwards, that's fine. If you want to meet with the officers and discuss them, if you want to talk to me, that's fine. I haven't got that information to hand. I think you have made your point. Thank you.
Sorry,
Councillor
I want to
Hocking.
come back to that because at the beginning of this administration, it was all very much, we're not doing anything in secret anymore. We're not doing anything behind closed doors. All the Conservatives, they never told us anything. We were going to have all these conversations in public where the public could hear what was going on and could find out what's going on. So I don't care, frankly, that this is an environmental committee meeting. Venture security is up here. I've asked a question. I'd like someone to provide an answer, please. and I'm perfectly within my rights to do that.
Well, you can, and I have said that you will be provided with the answer, but you will not be provided with it this minute.
Okay. Thank you. I think we'll move on to the next item now, which is the Environmental Policy Action Plan.
Thank you. So the two things that have really progressed over the since our last meeting, I've already mentioned about the EV vehicles. So they have now been delivered and are out there and in use. And following on from the last committee meeting, we are in the process of just finalising our deal with EVC in terms of having those electric vehicle charging points installed in those 3 parks. The contract came across, which was just scrutinised by our solicitor. It's now back with their solicitor, or their legal team, so that we can just make sure that everybody's happy and with the deal that's on the table. I don't know whether Councillor Hocking wants to add anything else about flooding or air quality. Okay, so that's it for that item. Those are those two things.
Just a couple of things to add on air quality, Mark. One is that, as I mentioned to our guest this evening who raised the question of air quality, that there's a rollout of information going out to schools in January. There's also going to be a slight shift in attempts to place air quality monitoring devices around the city, where we've attempted to put them into schools, but schools often don't have the IT capacity to make them function effectively. So we're looking at placing more air quality sensors around the city to get a better handle on the air quality across the city.
Nothing else for that item.
Okay. Any questions about the Environmental Policy Action Plan? Okay. So moving on, we have item 11, which is weed control.
So just to give a bit of a background about how we've arrived at where we are. So the responsibility for weed control in Salisbury was delegated from Wiltshire Council to the City Council in April 2017. And although delegated, there is no statutory minimum standard that the City Council has to comply with. So i.e. it could just let the weeds grow. Wiltshire Council continued to use glyphosate on the highway and pavements up to and including last year. So Salisbury City Council didn't actually have to take any further action in terms of dealing with weeds, in that, or not too much more action in terms of dealing with weeds beyond that. However, this year, Wiltshire Council made the decision to stop weed spraying in the city, and that decision was unfortunately not communicated to the City Council early enough in the season for us to be able to have just done anything seriously about it, which meant that the street scene team could only offer sporadic hand weeding across the city, which I think drew a significant number of complaints from residents, as the team were not able to meet the demand that was coming in. In September 2021, the City Council voted to halt the use of glyphosate in its parks, which is where we had been using it for different reasons. But that decision was amended in October of this year to allow the use of glyphosate to treat invasive species. So with that background information, I've provided a number of options and some of the costs around with those. So weed spraying using glyphosate. So the estimated cost of that is around £30,000 for a contractor to deliver 2 sprays. That figure is based on coverage of the area previously sprayed by Wiltshire Council, which is around 260 kilometres of curb edges across the city. Now, if the council wished to go down that route, we would need to amend our policy further on the use of glyphosate. But obviously, glyphosate is known to be an effective weed treatment of weeds in the city. It's been used in proven. We could use a non-glyphosate weed spray. Now, unfortunately, at the moment, the cost of that type of weed spray is about 3 times the cost for the same coverage. The main reason for this is the volume of non-glyphosate weed killer required to treat the same area is much larger, hence the significant increase on the price. However, a number of contractors that we've spoken to have indicated that they are expecting for new products to be released onto the market early next year, and these are expected to be significantly less in price than that current estimate that I've given of 3 times the price of the glyphosate. We could look at a weed ripper, which is a piece of equipment, and the estimated cost of that is around £7,000. That was trialled. We did trial a Wiltshire Council piece of equipment. They let us borrow it, but unfortunately, it seemed to kick off a lot of stones and detritus, which could easily cause damage to parked cars and vehicles. So that type of thing, I think, would work quite well in park areas. Along the curb and roadside, I think it would probably be quite tricky, especially with lots of cars parked around. We could look to increase the size of the street scene team. So, for example, we could have the cost of 2 street scene operatives or 2 further street scene operatives, and a new van would cost approximately £70,000 for the operatives with their on costs, the van and the fuel, etc. So the dedicated weed control team could be used in the spring and summer, and then could be well utilised in enhancing the street scene activity in the autumn and winter. We could look at the redirection of 2 of our seasonal street scene operatives. So we employ 2 seasonal street scene operatives to undertake a late barrow shift in the city centre at the moment because of additional waste that's created. These could be redirected to tackle weeds, noting that the late barrow either would cease, or would be, watered down. It should also be noted that we're not always able to recruit to these positions for the full season. So, i.e., somebody comes in, then they go off and do something else, and then we have to recruit again. So it's not a solid position for that full length of time. And we may well have to buy another vehicle to be able to service that. We could do what we've done this year, which is have a reactionary street scene weeding service. So as per this year, the existing team will tackle what they can, when they can, but results are unlikely to meet residents' expectations. So it is recommended that the committee have a look at those options that I put forward. And of course, if you've got others that I haven't considered, then please debate those and let me know which way you would like us to go.
Thank you, Mark. I've got a couple of things to say about that before I offer the options to the committee for discussion. One of which is, I think, without looking at changing policy, the way forward is going to be a flexible approach, given that we've got cost implications for using newly developed products. We also have, shall we say, different issues around the city, and that there are certain areas where sort of proactive spraying has been requested more strongly. And that the exact cost, I think we need to sort of try and calculate by looking at where we could use new products which are not harmful to the environment, and combine that with the more, shall we say, sort of basic method of removing weeds by hand, which I know we've got better capacity for this year than we had at the same point last year. So I'd ask Mark if he can make some calculations around that issue. Clearly, we don't want to spend vast sums of money on untested new products just because they're environmentally safe. Those are my first thoughts on it, and I think we need to discuss this further before we come to a conclusion. But I think, given that we've had various test cases over the last few months where people have the companies have been prosecuted for the impact of certain products, that should be avoided at all costs. I'm open to comments now if anybody has any things they want to ask or say. Councillor Charleston.
Thank you, Chair. It's been it's been a minute since we had the initial debate about glyphosate, however you pronounce it. I thought one of the options at the time was, one of the alternative options at the time was to try and burn these things out. Is that not an option? Is that something we can consider? Is that better or worse, or
So in terms of using some sort of flame sort of thrower, so again, quite it's very time consuming to do that. It's also we would have to get permission from Wiltshire Council in terms of because on the highways, in terms of using any kind of heat product on tarmac and things like that, then you know, it's not ours to potentially cause issues with. So although that's not on there, that is something we could consider, but I think the risk assessments around that would be quite significant as well. Yeah, but I could look at that to see if that is a something, see how much that would cost, and put that as an option going forward.
Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor Riddle, and then Councillor Hocking?
I was just going to say, until we have more information about how much the cost of these alternative products is going to come down in the new year, it's difficult to make a commitment. Obviously, Mark's got to plan what his workforce are going to do. But I'm inclined to think we take a bit more time and see just what those alternative methods would cost in terms of the new products once they're out. If you've heard that they are going to come down in price, that might be very helpful. So I don't see any need to rush on this one. It's unlikely that the weather next year will be quite as favourable to weed growth as it has been in the last wet summer. So I don't see a need to panic about it.
Councillor Hocking.
Thank you. I'm sort of despair, really. I mean, how are our officer, how is Mark supposed to do his job when faced with a situation like this? Right, you're the administration. You've brought a paper to committee for a decision, and the first thing that's come up is the chair and the vice chair have said, "Oh, don't know about that. Might need a bit more information." Well, did we not ask Mark about getting that information before he brings the paper to committee? Because what we're doing now, this is just a talking shop. This paper is pointless. Yeah, it achieves nothing. It won't help Mark at all because he's now already effectively been told to go away and do some more work and have a look at something else and other options. Why are we even talking about this? You're the administration of the council. You're supposed to lead this council, and you're completely not. Utter failure. This is terrible. Why on earth are we even talking about this?
Can I respond to that now? The paper wasn't a waste of time. We now have a clear picture on some of the basic costs of managing a problem which is affected by the weather. And I actually spoke to Mark before this meeting and said that the sensible way forward seems to be, at this stage, a more flexible approach. So it's got a complete understanding and agreement with Mark that this is the most sensible way forward. There wasn't a way of drafting an alternative plan, which is a sort of hybrid of all these different processes. We had to use the starting point as the basic information of using one option or the other for treating weeds and for managing them manually. So Mark has explored all these things because otherwise we wouldn't have been able to make a fair assessment of what the options are. But this wasn't put forward by Mark as a proposal. This is background information to help us start a process of discussion and negotiation, which is dependent upon variables upon which we have very little control. We need to make some kind of estimate, but I believe Mark is the best person placed to make those estimates based on the existing demand from the previous growing season, which was excessively high, based on his now full capacity or almost full capacity team to carry out the work. And I think that Mark is probably more than happy to make that assessment and come back with an amended sort of, or some kind of suggestion about how we manage the costs before we have to finally set the budget. Councillor Corbyn.
Thank you. Firstly, thank you, Mark, for doing the prep work, as always. One question I have is how much stock of the nasty stuff do we actually hold?
We don't
No.
hold, we hold, well, up until recently, we held 0 glyphosate. I think, because you have to, be trained in how to, administer it and all that sort of stuff. For the treatment of the invasive species, we have a contractor going in and doing that particular piece of work.
Okay. Looking at the proposals, I think for me that actually having the 2 additional operatives would be my preferred. Especially if it meant that they could do the weed control during the spring and summer and then be deployed to do other things at other times of the year. But with regard to how we actually keep our residents happy, we all know that that is actually a very hard line to follow, because in some areas people don't mind the weeds because of the wildlife that that live around them, and in other areas people are absolutely appalled by it. So respecting the fact that Councillor Hocking took a swipe at the administration again, which actually saved that for full council. It would be so much better to do that. I think the paper in front of us is a good paper. I think our decision isn't going to be an easy one, and I don't think everybody is going to be happy with it.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Nettle.
Thanks, Mark, for this. I think it's a very useful paper, actually, and it gives us a number of options. I'm trying to work out, and you can probably better work that out than I can because you know your business, is which are the, I mean, it's all about, as far as I can see, it's all extra cost. Is what we've got on the table on this in this sheet.
Unless we do what we did this year, which is do a reactionary weed. Yes.
So I was trying to work out what is the what's the best bang for the buck, I suppose, and what works in your mind, given your experience and your team's experience, the best. I mean, that having 2 operatives. I mean, the city is quite a big place, and I know they're extra. I wasn't sure, do we need them full time if it's 2 operatives? As Councillor Riddle has said that, it's mainly the summer. Is it sort of a seasonal thing that somebody can do?
So this is one of the options where we could look at redirecting our seasonal summer staff, from working, doing the late barrow round, and we could redirect them to do more weeding.
Yeah, because it seems to me there's an option of doing a mixture of things, isn't there, rather than one size fits all. And what I'm trying to get to is, rather than spend the £70,000 on, because that looks like two people for a year, does it?
So yes, that's right. So yes, the additional 2 street scene operatives, that's us adding 2 more people to the establishment. Yeah. And going and buying another van and all the rest of it that goes on top of that.
And it just seems to me that actually the worst time is, call it April till October. We could get seasonal people, people that's on holiday, students or whatever, and even maybe community service people to help with doing this sort of work, and then use some of the money for other things that are more difficult that they can't clear. And I think that would be a balanced approach. And I quite like that, because we're helping the community as well as supporting the community, if you see my point.
I think, the real issue is around the unpredictability of the weather and, to a certain extent, the unpredictability of demands of residents. I've had conflicting demands in my ward. Please get rid of the weeds, please keep the weeds. Other areas, it's much more distinct, where the majority of people would like to have them removed. And I think that's where you need to have that option of spraying on a wider scale, but not necessarily with, something that's going to be harmful to the environment. So I think we can get an approximate plan for how we address it, but there needs to be some flexibility within that, which inevitably will have impacts on costs. We might save money, or we might have to put a little bit more towards it. But you know, if you're asking to predict the weather and what local residents might want, then
I think
it's quite difficult to
we
pin
know
it
it's going to
down.
be rain more, don't we? I mean, that's why we're all here for this particular meeting. We know climate change is here and it's going to rain. So I think one of the biggest issues is making sure that the gullies are clear and the pavements, you don't trip over weeds and all the rest of it. And I think that's seems to be the main issue. But no, I think, you know, I just go back just to re-emphasize, if we can go for something like summer seasonal work in that budget, then I think that would help us.
Thank you. We have a hand up right at the back. Would you like to come forward, Joe, and make your comment or ask your question?
Thank you for your indulgence, and I'm sorry I was late. I had to work late, and I just go along with what you're saying, John, about a combination of all kinds of things. But I'd like to feed something in that came up at the budget meeting that we had a week or two ago. A lady was suggesting that we could ask the members of the public to adopt their own patch outside. You remember, Mark, because Mark was what you were giving a presentation and when you, whether that could be fed into the mix, because I think if that's fed into the mix alongside the other things that's decided, then actually it helps the community to feel part of it rather than the council's doing it to them. Anyway, it's just a suggestion, but I thought it was a good one. Thank you.
That's a really interesting idea, and I had a local resident ask the same thing of myself, and I haven't raised it with Mark yet because it was a relatively small patch.
Let's do it then.
But yeah, it's definitely something worth considering. Thank you. Any other comments or questions about this paper? Councillor Hibbert.
Thank you. It was a question. What would be the time? I get this is very unpredictable and we don't know what the weeds are going to do. But what would be the timescales between us deciding something tonight and it being implemented? I.e., if we were to say choose weed spraying of some degree, would we go out and buy weed spraying tomorrow and start spraying them in January, or would we wait until the next season? Or
no? So whatever's decided, but I would say we've probably got the winter months to make a decision, so we could monitor the market as well in terms of what our contractors have said around the price of the non-glyphosate coming down. But with any of this, I think we can, the administration can decide what they're going to put in the budget, and then we can, or I can, do a bit of a cherry pick around the things that the ways that we go forward to deal with the weeds. But it would be this, whatever we do, I think it will be an improvement on the year gone by, because we won't get caught, we won't be caught short in terms of waiting for thinking Wiltshire Council were coming around the corner with their weed sprayers when they're not. And just to say, we have had quite a bit of positive feedback recently on social media as well about how hard our teams have been working. I think, actually, I think it was Councillor Corbyn passed on some thanks from residents up to Visors Road. It seemed some of our street scene operatives up there clearing weeds and gullies and doing quite a lot of work. So I think again in your area, John, there was somebody who fed back some positive feedback around the work that have been done. The problem we've got is that there are 260 kilometres. I think it's about 162 miles of, that's a lot of road to keep weed free for anybody. So I think this, hybrid model of maybe asking the community to get involved where they want to, maybe using some of the seasonal workers to do some of the additional weedings on some of our estates and taking some of that work out of the city centre, and doing that. And then maybe using some of the non-glyphosate that in certain areas, that could be the trick.
Thank you, Mark. And in terms of budget calculation, possibly knowing if we had, based on the same situation that we had last year in terms of demand on services and the rate of growth, you could probably come up with a sort of maximum or minimum possible
I think the thing is, well, it depends on whether we want to try and spray 260 kilometres of road twice a year, or whether we're going to, you know, be a little bit more selective in terms of trialling areas a little bit more. We did do a few trials with non-glyphosate towards the end of the season last year, but it, you know, it was towards the end of the season, so it was a bit more difficult to see how effective it was. So, you know, this year gives us an opportunity to look at things a little bit differently.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on this item? Okay, thank you. So we'll look forward to hearing from your calculations what we might do next year. Thank you. Recommendation is that Mark looks at maximum, an estimated maximum and minimum cost based on a variety of approaches to addressing weeds and weed control across the city, which might vary from one area to another in terms of whether it's used, sprays are used, or whether it's going to be hand weeded, or in some cases not weeded at all. I think we do respond to residents' requests, and therefore I think, you know, Mark will he will know historically where those areas are based on last year, and that will enable him to come up with a plan and some approximate costings.
Sorry, Chair, but the recommendation says 4.1, it is recommended that the committee consider the options outlined in this paper and make a recommendation of their preferred option. So this can be considered by the council as part of the budget. Are we now saying we're not doing that after all, and we're going to go down a different route completely?
We are going to consider the options and come up with a combination of actions based on those options, which Mark will determine when he's had time to reflect on it.
Sorry, are we voting
Councillor Hibbert.
Are we voting on this, or are you scheduling a seconder, or what?
We're not voting on it. This was just a paper that was brought to the committee for discussion.
No, it's not. It says recommendations. Understanding orders, you either have to withdraw the paper or we vote on it.
May I make a suggestion, please, which is that that Mark has made it clear that we do not yet know what one of the options potentially is going to cost us next year, and that is the non-glyphosate spraying. And that is a very important thing that we could have in our armoury, and it is very much in keeping with the environmentally friendly aspirations of this administration. Since we don't yet have that piece of information, it would be foolish to be rushed into a decision about spraying or weeding, which doesn't have to happen until next spring.
What I'm saying is you need to withdraw the paper because we cannot do what the recommendations are saying. As a
Councillor Corbyn.
Thank you, Chair. I propose an amendment, if I may. I would like to say that we consider the options outlined in this paper and make a recommendation for the preferred option. But given the fact that we know the uncertainty of the friendlier variety, that we add in there that we wait for the winter and that we bring it back once Marcus, we've given ourselves 3 months to get the information about, to see if there is a drop in the cost of the friendlier variety. I'm not quite sure how to word that, so just give me a minute. Mark, help me. Can you help me? Can somebody help me word that better?
Can I try and make a suggestion just to make it slightly cleaner cut and perhaps a bit clearer? Perhaps you could somebody could put it forward that perhaps you defer the decision to the next Environment Climate Committee once the non-glyphosate costs have been established.
That seems to do.
Yeah, I'm happy to propose that if somebody will second it.
Okay. And how many people are voting in favour of that? I'm sorry.
Question, sorry, and then,
I beg your pardon.
sorry, what is the implication then on the budget setting then if we defer? Because the paper says the costs may be known in 2024. But what if that's not between now and the next environment and climate change? What if the costs are known the product comes available in November 24. I'm just concerned about how this impacts our budget setting. Are we just going to put a nominal number down to cover a potential cost for the budget setting, or does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I think what we're asking Mark to do is to base an estimate of the cost on the basis of what we've discussed this evening in terms of targeting the use of spray and using that in combination with other methods of weed control. So Mark can come up with some calculation on costs that will incur. So that we're not coming to the point where we're making decisions about the budget at this stage. There has to be a decision at some point, obviously, but until we've explored all the options and we have the costings, then we won't be able to give a precise figure, because Mark will be able to work on the figures that we derived from that investigation. Councillor Corbyn.
I'm just trying to work out when the next meeting would be.
It's 11th of March.
If it's March, then that would fit in okay, wouldn't it, with weed control?
Well, the budget would have already been set by then, but in terms of getting a contractor in place or getting my team out there doing stuff, then that works, yes.
Okay, I'm happy with that.
Okay, so well, I did ask people to vote on it, but then we came back to Councillor Hibbert's question.
Sorry, just for clarity, because I'm getting a little bit confused. So we're going to make a decision in March on the recommendations that Mark brings in March. Okay, is that what we understand? But we will have had to set the budget in January and send that off. So we're going to ask Mark in this, through to you, Chair, to make an assessment of what that cost might be, so we can go into the budget.
Yes.
So in fact, it won't come back. Well, I suppose it will come back to the March meeting for approval. Yeah. Okay, I understand.
There's a finance and governance meeting before we set the budget. That's, I believe, week before full council.
Yeah, it's in early January.
What I'm going to ask is that Mark provides some figures based on the discussion we've had this evening that we can take to the leaders group, and that can go into the figures on the budget, because the figures aren't finalised for the budget yet anyway. But there needs to be some flexibility here to adjust to what we've discussed this evening. So, Mark, is it possible that you'll be able to give us a reasonably close estimate to the costs of this mixed way of operating, which obviously you haven't quantified exactly yet?
Yes, I can give you some figures. Obviously, it depends on whether you want to be targeting the whole city, or whether it's going to be more flexible than that. And we're just looking at it from a, state to an estate sort of case basis.
But we should be able to have a figure that we can put in the budget to make a decision about at the appropriate time.
Yes.
Okay.
Councillor Hocking, that's really not very helpful. We've told you that we're waiting for some more information that Mark is going to be able to get about the cost of the non-glyphosate option. Now, I can't change that however many times I say that to you. you're trying to make a point, and I'm afraid it's not really helpful in this situation to do that. Why don't you? But Councillor Nettle has just suggested a way around that.
Could you read it back, please, Janine?
I didn't ask you to vote on it yet. Councillor Nettle suggested it.
I put forward the amendment, so did somebody second it?
If you wouldn't mind, Janine, please.
So to amend the recommendation to defer the decision until the next Environment and Climate Committee until the non-glyphosate costs have been established. From Councillor Caroline Corbyn to clarify what she was suggesting.
Can I just jump in a sec?
So to make this clear, we've made a decision. When we're going to make a final decision about the overall approach at the next meeting, but Mark is going to provide us with some interim figures, enable us to set a budget for that work.
Chair, you would be able to put it on the full council agenda if you wanted to, because obviously if it has an implication, you can vote on it then. Excuse me, Chair. Councillor Hockin, with due respect to you, and I really do respect you as a person, and you come up with some very good things. I think your constant bashing of the administration this evening has been disgraceful, and we are here just to do certain things, one of which is this paper. So can I please have a seconder for my amendment? That's okay, 2 seconders.
This isn't,
Councillor Nettle.
this is not particularly helpful. What we need to do is we have a paper in front of us. It has a recommendation. All the options we're looking to consider, and there is a cost implication for one of those options. We can accept the officer's recommendations, so we can accept the options that the officer sent, and understand that there is an outstanding cost that the officer needs to investigate, and we don't know what that figure is, but we're going to build that into the options. We can then vote on that, and then everybody's happy, and we don't interrupt our or go against our standing orders, and it gives the officer time to do that, and then a sum of money, if he hasn't found the exact cost, which I'm sure he won't find the exact cost, because we don't know if it's going to be for the whole city or for streets, but a cost can then be put in for the budget so that we can move on. And we don't then, I mean, the only other thing, then, if you want to defer, or if you want to come back and say which streets it is that's going to be used, at least we know we've got a budget to do it with. That's my logic in thinking of this. So I think we had a proposal before, and I'm happy to still second it.
Councillor Charleston.
Sorry, can I just be clear that of my understanding of this is that what we're suggesting then is that whatever the figure ends up being in the budget may not be enough, maybe enough, but may not be enough to cover the most expensive of these options. So that this committee is essentially accepting the risk that it may choose in the future, or may wish in the future, to have an option that we can't afford. Is that right? So if it turned out to be £90,000, as it says in the paper, we think that's the preferred option, but the budget has put in 40 because that's what Mark has come back with, and that's not something we could end up doing. Am I correct in that? Sorry. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I've lost track of where we are now. Have we voted, or do we need to vote? Okay, we've had a proposer, a seconder, and can we see a show of hands, please, for a vote to the amendment to the recommendation? Okay. Okay. Moving on to our final item, tree policy.
Yeah, so at the last committee meeting, I brought the revised tree policy to be agreed and adopted. It was adopted with the exception of a small section which was in relation to the tree canopy cover figures that were detailed in there. Councillor Hibbert raised a query around that. Councillor Hibbert contacted me this morning to say that following some further information that had been passed to her in terms of around the impact on the budget, etc., that she was less concerned about the figure. I don't know if you wanted to say anything more on that, Councillor Hibbert. Or...
Yeah, the reason why I raised the question at the last one of these committee meetings is I was just concerned that given how the average tree canopy coverage for urban areas has worked out, given that they work it out off a much larger geographical area, I was just concerned that we were setting ourselves up to fail by setting a large target, and was worried about the cost implications of it from that. But if we're looking to, fund our tree planting policy from things like CREM fees and sort of community donations, as we've seen recently, and national top-down grants, then I suppose that mitigates that concern. But I do think that that target of 21%, I do think that's top heavy, but it's up to everyone here, I guess, if they agree or disagree with that. Personally, I'll prefer it to, have a lower first stage to see if we can achieve that. But yeah, be interested to see what people's thoughts are.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on policy? Councillor Hocking.
Yeah, Chair, sorry, as I'm not allowed to bash the administration because that's not fair. Even though you spent the last 4 years bashing us, but there you go. See what sauce for the goose and all that sort of stuff. I think this is a triumph for bureaucracy over operational just doing it. We have another 50-page policy, 50 pages, seriously. And it goes down to the level of, if you see a bat, you must inform your supervisor. Come on, seriously, are we not capable and grown up enough to be doing this without having to write down a 1,000,000-page policy? CCTV. There are 2 reasons why this trees might affect CCTV. Well, obviously they're in the way. So as part of our normal operational day-to-day stuff, we'd review that and say, do you know what, we'll prune that and we'll prune that and we'll cut that down so our camera can see, or we'll move the camera. Do we really need to have policies where we write down every tiny little single thing that we do? Because the problem with that is then you've actually got to stick to it. Otherwise, you'll end up going outside your policy. Yeah, if you leave it fluid with enough room to maneuver, it gives you operational freedom and budgetary freedom to move assets around and do things in a number of different ways. If you write down chapter and verse on everything, then you've got to stick to it. And that's the problem with it. Policies are fine. If you say we have a tree policy where we need to do this, this, and this, you can have a half a pager and that's it. And then you work out the operational side around that. But if you've got 50 pages of stuff, it means you've got to stick to it. And whenever you want to do something, you've got to go back through your 50 pages and try and find out if there's something in there that you have to follow before you can actually carry stuff out. I mean, there's stuff in here about bats, which means if you see one, you've got to consult a whole load of different various specialist groups. What do you want to do that for? Surely we must know if there's a bat, it's a bat. Crikey, again, trying for bureaucracy over actually getting stuff done. And we talk about, we haven't got any money for this, we haven't got any money for that. A part of the reason is we spend all our time writing gumph like this. Just rationalise your policy into half a dozen simple things and then go and do the work. You'll actually find you get much more done in a lot less time and be much more efficient for it. Thank you. Sorry, that wasn't bashing the administration.
Thank you. Just a word on policy. I think policies are really important. The policy has now been written. If there's anything within that policy which is not accurate or there for good reason, then it can be amended. But in my experience, that policy is something that you have to you need to refer to from time to time to ensure that certain things are maintained. Wildlife example is one of them in this particular case. So it informs practice. It doesn't restrict practice. It just lays down how and what can be done. It doesn't prevent you from being creative. It just makes sure that certain basic standards and expectations are adhered to, some of which are legal, some of which are just something we've agreed to do as a city. But without the policy, you've got no starting point for any kind of discussion if there's a dispute. Councillor Charleston. Sorry, Councillor Corbyn.
Thank you. Any good administration should have robust policies, and that would be the minimum expectation of our residents. So the fact it's 50 pages, it doesn't matter, as long as people can navigate it and it's in plain English so people know what they're expected to do, then that's fair enough by me.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Nettle.
Yeah, just I agree.
Oh, sorry, I'm losing track here because hands keep going up and down. Councillor Charleston.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I think the criticism of policy, that it's something that means that we don't have to stick to the policy, is an interesting one. I think my counterpoint to that is that, you know, that means we actually have to stick to the policy. You know, that we're not allowed. If someone decides to come along and throw some bats through a wood chipper, we can tell them that's probably not a good thing to have done. I don't think. I don't think, you know, Councillor Hopkins and I and others are ever going to agree on this. Which is no bad thing. I'm very happy with this, and I'm very happy to propose it.
Thank you. Councillor Nettle.
Yeah, no, I think you need a policy, and you've got your policy. I just would like to see a review date at the bottom of it, because I think, as we've just heard, I couldn't see a review date on it, but you know, things change and legislation changes as well. So is that a review date? Sorry, I've got this one. No, it doesn't. It just tells me when it's been done. It's not saying this policy will be reviewed in 2 years, 3 years, or 5 years time.
Very, very happy to have a review date on there. I think a 2-year review date is probably, or 2 or 3 year review date is probably adequate.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on the amendments to the tree policy? Okay, well, I'd like to thank Mark for his work, because, as you say, it's quite a painstaking process, but at least we know we have a policy which is going to be effective and accurate and meets our own needs. So thank you very much for that. No problem. Okay, so we need to make a vote on the amendments to the existing tree policy. Okay. Seconded by Councillor Nettle. All those in favour? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. Right, in that case, I think we can declare the meeting closed. Thank you. And a Merry Christmas indeed.
Pay the Daily Mail 50.
Yeah, I did see that, which was quite funny. I saw loads of fun things have been happening in the news. I watched a bit of Rishi versus the COVID lawyer. Oh, really? And Rishi didn't have to give it back, I tell you. This bloke, you know, he's got the opportunity of pouring over every WhatsApp message, every email, every slow time, you know, having years to, you know, put his case together. And we just go like, sorry, no, it's not like that. He did this